and they don't necessarily know. And then I point out a little something here. I say, well, what about Dr. Evil? You know, a guy, he's a mad scientist, and he's, you know, and he does things, he uses his knowledge in a certain way that we would not recognize as wise. I like historical figures that we say, well, Hitler, a great logistics guy perhaps, could move Jews to concentration camps, could speak wonderfully as a knowledge of how to sway the people into a certain way. But would we ask, was he a wise man? Now, whether or not he's successful, that's a different story. There are many people who lived and died and were never, say, caught in the act of war or some kind of atrocity, who didn't have to pay for that which they did, yet we'd still not consider them wise. We can consider them intelligent. And we would say, sure, Hitler had all this knowledge, but yet there was something lacking in his application of his knowledge that precludes him from being considered wise. Moreover, it may not be that there's an absence of something, you know, in how he acted, but maybe there's something positive in how he acted that suggests he's not wise. That he did use it. That it was an absence of use of his knowledge, but instead that he used it in such a manner that went away from the proper use of wisdom that would be of knowledge that would be required of wisdom. Now, I just injected a term there called proper, and I've also suggested that Hitler did not use his knowledge in a particular way that, say, would have created wisdom. Now, this I fear, well, I'm almost certain that there will be those out there who would suggest that what I am saying is that there is a component to wisdom that requires something more than just knowledge, and that component is some kind of ethical behavior or ethical application. Now, a lot of people who reject the notion that there is actually a preordained or a right and a wrong way to live, that to which we must agree, and it's not up to us, that it's something we discover. They may say, well, you know, that's wrong. Now, of course, what they'd be arguing is that it's factually wrong, and that, you know, I'm making an error in how I discuss wisdom. And in that case, they would suggest that perhaps wisdom is merely something that has knowledge, and perhaps you navigate well throughout life. But I think we could see that criminals can navigate well through life, but I don't know if I would call them wise. Moreover, they may say that I'm morally wrong by suggesting that there's a moral component when, in fact, there is not one. But I think this is a problem for them, because this is self-referentially defeating, in that once you suggest that there is no such thing as an objective morality, and then you say it is objectively immoral to push your views of morals on others, you have just made an objective moral statement, and thus you have kind of negated your own argument there by suggesting I've done something morally wrong. After all, if there are no such things as objective morals, I could not have done anything morally wrong. Moreover, you're pushing your moral view on me, and we can apply the same thing to you and suggest you are morally wrong in doing so. But not to quibble over that, but just to let you know that even in my own definition of wisdom that I will give you, there will be those who say, I don't know about that. And of course, I love to hear the arguments so that we can see if how well mine stands up in the end. And that's one of the beauties of philosophy. We're not. I'm not here to teach you necessarily the answers, and those are accepted by all. You know, they're not. I would argue there's probably very few things that are accepted by all in any discipline. So we are looking for the necessary sufficient conditions for wisdom, and we decided that knowledge is at least one of them. I'm going to imply that some moral behavior is going to be another, that thing of which somebody might quibble. And I would say there is a right way to apply our knowledge. Now, do we always know the right way? I'm not going to say that we do always know the right way. Can we know the right way? Well, that's another story of debate within the field of philosophy. So we've got a second component, knowledge and morals. And of course, I'll add a third one to that, and we'll call that application. That is, you can know the right, you can have knowledge, you can know what the right way is, for example, morally, but what if you just don't apply it? What if you sit on your hands knowing that there's a right thing to do? You've got a baby dying perhaps in the icy cold water, or the mom just dropped the baby in there, and you know that it would be the right thing to help the mom get the baby out because she can't swim perhaps, and you say, well, I'm just I don't want to get involved. Well, you have knowledge, you have moral, knowledge of the moral thing to do that is good, just, and right, to help people, and yet you choose not to, and thus, ultimately, you have failed to act wisely, and you lack wisdom. So what I'm going to define wisdom as, tentatively, unless somebody can add or detract from that, is wisdom is knowledge rightly applied to its proper end. That is, there's a way to act, we can know it, and we can apply it. And if we do all three of these things, we have wisdom. Now, if we are lovers of wisdom, that means we love to know what the right thing is, and to act appropriately in that occasion. And thus, from there, we could have a spring point, a jumping off point from which we could start learning what philosophy is and how we get this stuff. So now from there, to do these things, we have the three main areas of philosophy of which I spoke in the last video. Now, the last video I mentioned epistemology, which is the theories and studies of knowledge. We talked about metaphysics, how metaphysics studies reality and everything that exists. I'll use that term ontology quite a bit, which are theories of existence. And then we will talk about ethics, the good, the right, the just. In ethics, we'll also speak about aesthetics, that is beauty. Is there such thing as value when it comes to art and things of the sort? Are sunsets beautiful? Are paintings beautiful? Is music, is there objective beauty in music? Or the female or male form? Can we look at somebody and say that person's beautiful, or is that just my opinion? Now, once I say opinion, you're going to see how knowledge has to play with this. That are these views just nothing but beliefs that we were taught? Certain girls are beautiful because I was taught that way, and other things are grotesque because I was taught that way. Or were we taught that way because of that? And can we know these things? And so that's where we're going to stand. These are so interdependent upon each other, these three disciplines, that I would argue that one cannot claim wisdom without using all three, and that is the importance of jumping off from these three areas of study. Moreover, just in discussing each one of them, I will have to use the other disciplines to actually incorporate. I'll have to incorporate the other disciplines into the individual ones. For example, when I talk about epistemology, I want to know, is knowledge something that truly exists, or am I morally obligated to know? So you could see how both metaphysics and ethics are actually incorporated even into into epistemology as its own sub-discipline of philosophy. So it's kind of hard to say, well, I'll take one at a time and just learn one, then I'll learn the other. It's unfortunate. One of my old professors said, well, really what you got to do is you just got to dive in. It's like a swimming pool, and you just immerse yourself. And so with that, we've got the idea of what we're going to do as a second order discipline. We're going to ask, what is philosophy? We've discussed that a little. We ask, what is wisdom? And we've discussed that. We said it's knowledge rightly applied to its proper end. But then Once we get going, we got to ask another question. We say, well, what is knowledge then? And that's when we start breaking things down again. So we want to know, in the field of epistemology, we're going to ask the same second order discipline or answer to the first order application of epistemology. We want to know what knowledge is so that we could use the first order discipline of applying our knowledge. And so we go from philosophy, the second order discipline of that, second order discipline of wisdom. How do we apply that in first order? The first order discipline of wisdom requires knowledge. Knowledge requires what? What is the second order discipline? What are the necessary and sufficient conditions? We're going to ask, what does it mean to know? What are the necessary things? What do I have to have for knowledge? What is sufficient for knowledge? And can I even know it all? And then, what are my epistemic obligations? Do I have any? Am I obligated to know? These questions are what I will be asking in the following lecture.